Hello, my name is Sara-Dawn, and welcome to Friday Night Frights. Today's topic is something I've been very interested in since I was very young. I've been intrigued by this story for as long as I can remember, and I'm really excited to share this story with you today. This story has been portrayed in both writing and movies, and although it's considered one of the most famous paranormal experiences that have been documented, still not many people know about the Mothman. Today we're going to take a close look at the mysterious creature that caused hysteria and havoc in a small town in the 1960s. The story of the Mothman begins in Point Pleasant, West Virginia on November 15th, 1966. Two young couples were driving around Point Pleasant when they stumbled upon the TNT area of town. You're probably wondering what a TNT area is. Well, during World War II, Point Pleasant was home to a military base. This military base created and stored ammunition and explosives. Although abandoned after World War II, many of the structures known as igloos still stood in the woods near Point Pleasant. In the 60s, it became a very popular place for youth to visit and explore. Yeah, like I'd ever want to go hang out in a place called the TNT area. On November 15th, 1966, two young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Mallet, found themselves in the TNT area. After getting out of their car to walk around, the two ladies of the group spotted an odd figure in the distance. They described it as a man that stood 6 to 8 feet tall. He had wings but no neck, and the most notable feature was he had piercing red eyes. The couples got back into their car and drove away from the TNT area. As they drove away, the creature followed their car, even when they drove at speeds up to 160 kilometers per hour or 100 miles per hour. They claimed that the creature easily kept up with their car and just glided next to them as they drove. Once the couples reached the lights of the town, the creature disappeared into the sky. The couples went to the Mason County Courthouse to tell the police what they had saw. Deputy Halstead was the officer on duty that night, and he took the report from the couples. He separated all four of them into separate rooms and had them write down in detail what happened to them that night in the TNT area. All four of their detailed writings matched, and it is said that Deputy Halstead believed them. Those written statements can actually be viewed at the Mothman Museum in Point Pleasant. Deputy Halstead asked the couples if they'd mind coming back with him to the TNT area to show him where they saw this creature and to see if he could see it for himself. Although they didn't find the Mothman, Deputy Halstead said they heard many noises in the woods and all of them felt an eerie feeling. They also discovered hoof prints in the mud near the TNT area. Shortly after Deputy Halstead returned the couples back to Point Pleasant, Linda had to be hospitalized because she went into shock. Since that day, it was said that Linda had premonitions, paranormal sightings, major anxiety disorder, and she was visited by the Men in Black. We'll touch on the Men in Black a little later in this video. She also insisted on many occasions that a poltergeist was following her around and taunting her. The police held a press conference on November 16th to warn the public about this strange creature. The media picked up on this story and created the name Mothman, just to play on words from the TV series Batman. Although this is considered the first reported sighting of the Mothman, many believe that creatures like the Mothman, or possibly even the Mothman himself, have been seen since Babylonian times. These are what we call bird humanoids, and there are some recent examples of bird humanoids. In 1880, there were reports of a sighting of a man with bat wings and frog legs that would fly over Coney Island, New York. There's also the Jersey Devil of the 1900s. And in 1950, there was a bird humanoid dubbed the Houston Batman. He was seen in Texas, and these are just a few examples of the many bird humanoid sightings around the world. After that initial appearance of the Mothman, many people in Point Pleasant began to see him. One of the most famous sightings was by Marcella Bennett. She was visiting family just outside of the TNT area when she saw the Mothman. Marcella was walking from her car to her family's house, holding her 3-year-old daughter in her arms. Then she saw it. standing in the yard. Marcella's knees became weak and she fell to the ground on top of her 3-year-old daughter. She was unable to move, although her mind was racing, and she thought that she had hurt her daughter. She thought she heard the sounds of wings fluttering and assumed that the Mothman had flown away, and at this point she was able to get back onto her feet. She rushed into the house and her daughter was okay. Once in the house, the whole family claimed that the Mothman reappeared on their porch. They waited and eventually he flew away. Just like Linda, after this event, Marcella suffered from panic disorders, and she too had premonitions and nightmares. It became so bad that eventually she had to seek medical help for lack of sleep. This leads many to believe that sighting the Mothman can actually have an effect on the human psyche. He can also cause people that have run into him to have paranormal experiences. Throughout winter of 1966, the sightings of Mothman continued to rise, and it caused major hysteria in the small town. Not only did the Mothman affect the mental psyche of the people that he saw, but he could also cause physical damage to these people. Many of the people who saw the Mothman would have swollen eyes or random bruises that they couldn't explain after the encounter. During this same time, there was also a significant amount of UFO sightings in the area. This led many to believe that the Mothman and the UFOs were connected in some way, but others think it was just the hysteria in the town causing people to see things that weren't actually there. Everyone in Point Pleasant was so terrified of the Mothman that many of them did not leave their house after dusk. Even the local police force was outside every night searching for the Mothman. Soon, word spread like wildfire and lots of people started visiting Point Pleasant in hopes of either seeing the Mothman, which I don't understand. I don't want to see him. I don't know why you would go to Point Pleasant to look for him. But other people were just hoping to solve the mystery. John Keel, a writer from New York, was among these people. His most famous work, titled The Mothman Prophecies, details the eyewitness accounts during this time. Not only does it include eyewitness accounts and stories from the locals, but it also includes John's own accounts of what took place in that small town between 1966 and 1967. It is this book that inspired the Richard Gere movie, The Mothman Prophecies, and if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend it. John Keel ended up spending a lot of time in Point Pleasant, and he became good friends with one of their local writers, Mary Heyer. Mary, too, was investigating deep into the Mothman mystery. She was hoping to find answers and to write books. But the more she looked into this mystery, the stranger things got for her. This is where the men in black that I mentioned earlier come into play. Mary said she was visited by men that wore all black, and the only questions that they had for her were about her research on the Mothman. She said the deeper she dove into this story, the more often she was visited by these men in black, and each time they had more questions for her. Mary even wrote about these men in her research papers about the Mothman. She wrote that they made her feel extremely fearful and they never blinked their eyes when she saw them. A lot of other locals to Point Pleasant also recall the men in black visiting the town quite often. They used to walk around the streets and ask the locals questions about the Mothman. Many, including Mary, speculated that these men worked for the United States government, although the US government has denied this. They say they have absolutely no involvement with the Mothman sightings or with men in black. They've even said that they've never sent any officials to investigate the sightings. Mary wasn't the only writer having strange things happening to her. John Keel also often received calls from unknown numbers, and usually the person on the other end would just tell him to stay away from Point Pleasant and hang up the phone. By December 1967, there had been over 100 confirmed sightings of the Mothman in Point Pleasant. On December 15th, 1967, exactly 13 months after Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallett first saw the Mothman, the Silver Bridge that crosses the Ohio River collapsed during rush hour traffic. Many people claim they saw the Mothman near the bridge before it collapsed that day. 46 people lost their lives in this accident, and this was the largest bridge collapse by fatality numbers in the US at this time. It was a huge tragedy. After that day, the Mothman was never seen again in Point Pleasant. When an investigation was done into why the bridge collapsed, it was discovered that pin number 13 was not stable, and they believe pin number 13 on the bridge gave out, and that's why the bridge collapsed. Years after this incident, scientists were doing research in the TNT area of town, and they found areas that were horribly polluted by toxic waste. How did locals not realize that this place probably had some pollution issues, considering it was a place that stored and manufactured explosives? Of course there was going to be chemical pollution in the area. This has created a theory that the Mothman may have been a mutant bird. Many reject this theory due to the fact alone that the Mothman has been seen in other areas of the world since the Point Pleasant incidents. And also there is no bird large enough in the Point Pleasant area to be mistaken to be 6 to 8 feet tall, even with mutant pollution. The other major theory is that the Mothman is paranormal, and there's really two paths to this paranormal theory that we can take. Either the Mothman is a demonic being that brings misfortune and misery, or he is an angelic being that tries to warn humans of major incidences before they happen. There are many claims that the Mothman has been seen at other sites of tragedy before they happen. Some examples include the Chernobyl disaster of 1986, 9/11 in 2001, the I-35W bridge collapse in 2007, and the Haiti earthquake in 2010. But none of these have been fully confirmed, and there's lots of other sightings around the world before tragedies. These are just a few. More recently, people in Chicago have been reporting sightings of the Mothman this year. Is the Mothman trying to warn Chicago that they're due for some sort of disaster? I sure hope not. But you can watch a video all about the Chicago Mothman that was done by Vice by clicking the link in the description below. There are rumors that a lot of us will be seeing the Mothman really soon. It's believed that the Mothman will be featured in the new Fallout 76 game, which will take place, of course, in West Virginia. So what are your thoughts? Do you think the Mothman is real? Do you think he's a spooky creature of the night? A demon? An angel, perhaps? A bringer of sorrow? Or a messenger of tragedy to come? A mutant animal? Or just an urban legend? Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like. It lets me know to continue making videos like this one. If you'd like to see more of my content, please subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram at the SDRJ, and you can follow me on Snapchat at SDRJ. I'm Sara-Dawn. Thank you for watching the first episode of Friday Night Frights, and I hope to see you on a Friday in the near future.